Today, I'm going to be talking about Alfred Nobel, who was born on October 21st, 1833, in Stockholm, Sweden. And he was born to Emanuel and Henriette Nobel, and his father was a notable engineer and inventor and industrialist. So he was born into poverty, and he was one of the eight children that survived into childhood. And from a young age, though, his father moved to St. Petersburg, where he started manufacturing tools and explosives and became very successful out of this. One such tool was the veneer lathe, which allowed manufacturing plywood and naval mines. In 1842, the rest of the Nobel family moved to Russia, and this is where Nobel finally had access to private tutors and education, and he showed interest in chemistry and languages. He was fluent in English, French, German, Russian, Swedish, and Italian. And fun fact, he wrote English poetry better than a lot of us could write poetry. And his most famous work was Nemesis, which is a 4-part tragedy. And his religious life was weird. He was religious for most of his life in France, but he was non-agnostic and atheist for the first part of his life and the last part of his life. And despite this, he was still donated a bunch of money to the Lutheran Church in France. And he never married, but he did have 3 lovers. And the longest one was with him for 18 years. But the most notable one was Bertha Kinksey, she received a Nobel Peace Prize in 1905. So Nobel's most notable invention was dynamite, and his scientific career was this overall incredible. In 1850, he was interested in the manufacturing of safe use of nitroglycerin, which is a very unstable compound that is very explosive. At 18, he moved to the U.S., where he studied under John Ericsson, a Swedish-American engineer who designed the USS Monitor, a Civil War ironclad. And his first patent was in 1857 for a gas meter. And he was most of his life was devoted to manufacturing of safe explosives. And in 1863, he invented a detonator. In 1865, he invented a blasting cap. On September 3rd, 1864, disaster struck, and an explosion killed 5 people at his factory in Stockholm, including his younger brother Emil. And because of this, he created the nitroglycerin octabolygate in AB, which is means corporation, in a remote part of Sweden for safety reasons. And finally, he has breakthrough when he created dynamite in 1867, which was created using nitroglycerin and safe explosives and safe substances that would cause it to be safe. This was revolutionized mining and transportation engineering that allowed routes such as the Transcontinental Railroad to be completed. And in 1875, he created gel ignite, which was a more powerful version of TNT or of dynamite, and that was the staple of the age of engineering. And less notable, but still very important, was his creation of ballastite in 1887, which was a smokeless powder that allowed for the invention of cordite, which is very important in propellants. And in 1884, he was elected a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. And a lot of his wealth came from gelignite, but it also came from his investing in his brother's company, Brandebel, which is an oil company. And that's where most of his assets were. Overall, he had 355 patents and 90 plus arms factories, which is weird because he considered himself a pacifist. His most notable his legacy lives on in the Nobel Prize, which was created because of what is said to be a magazine reported his false death, and some quotes in it were, "The merchant of death is dead," and Dr. Alfred Nobel became rich by finding more ways to kill more people faster is dead. This story scarred Nobel, and he decided that he was going to leave a better legacy. And so after his death, he devoted 94% of his assets to this prize, which at the time was 31 million Swedish kroner. and now that is worth 3.1 billion kroner, or 472 million US dollars, and that is double the price of the initial price with inflation. And the first five prizes was in physics, medicine, physiology, and chemistry, and then there was a literature prize, and then the Nobel Peace Prize. The sixth one was added in economics in 1968, but that is controversial as if it's a real Nobel Prize or not. But overall, his legacy still lives in the Nobel Prize. And just to sum it up, his legacy is very controversial. He lived a life of contradiction, saying he was pacifist, but also owning arms factories. But no matter what you say, he leaves a better legacy because of his Nobel Prize, which is the highest achievement, personal or scientific achievement someone can achieve.